Trump pushes to kick out Ibrahim Traore's supporters from America. Rain taps against the windows of the West Wing like a countdown. Inside, the air is thick with tension. A man in a red tie leans forward at the long oak table, his face flushed, veins pulsing beneath his temples. I want every one of these people out of my country. Now. No delays. No exceptions. His voice cuts through the room like a blade. The directive is clear. All known supporters of Ibrahim Traore, the young reformist leader of Burkina Faso, are to be expelled from the United States within 72 hours. They're labeled as a fifth column, accused of spreading anti-American propaganda through academia, journalism, and activism. Aides sit frozen. One dares to speak. The Secretary of Homeland Security, jaw-tight, eyes flickering with unease. Mr. President, we cannot expel American citizens for political opinions. It's unconstitutional. But Trump doesn't hear him. His mind is already made up. They're not real Americans, he snaps. They love Africa more than they love us. The meeting ends abruptly. The directive is rushed into drafting. 2 hours later, it's signed. Inside the Oval Office, the pen hovers over paper. The stroke is swift, decisive, final. The executive order bears no nuance, no compromise. Immediate expulsion of individuals promoting anti-American narratives. Through support for hostile foreign regimes. It is vague. It is sweeping. It is dangerous. Aides exchange glances. Some see an opportunity. Others see disaster. But none dare challenge the decision. Outside, the rain falls harder. Inside, silence settles like smoke after an explosion. Trump stands, adjusts his jacket, and walks toward the Rose Garden. Cameras flash. Microphones wait. He steps behind the podium. The world watches. We will not tolerate those who undermine our values, who side with foreign dictators over their own nation. Behind him, flags flap in the wind. In Washington, university campuses stir with panic. Journalists scramble for sources. Across the Atlantic, in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim Traore watches the broadcast on a cracked screen in his office. Within hours, the list leaks online. Names scroll across screens like a death sentence. 47 professors, 23 journalists, 15 human rights activists, 8 former military officers, all targeted, not for espionage, not for treason, but for praising an African. Leader universities erupt in chaos. Harvard, Yale, Stanford. Faculty offices buzz with disbelief. Students gather outside administration buildings, signs already forming. Trump dictator, academic freedom. Now, in newsrooms across the globe, headlines blare, America expels its own citizens for political beliefs. Trump orders deportation. Of intellectuals who praised African leader, one name rises above the rest. Dr. Sarah Williams, Georgetown University professor of international relations. She has spent her life studying governance, democracy, and development, and now she's being punished for it. She stares at the screen, hands trembling. My family has been in America for 4 generations. Now I'm being deported for saying that a young African leader has effective methods. Across town, a veteran correspondent for the Washington Post receives his notice mid-broadcast. This is pure political persecution, he says, visibly shaken. I'm being expelled for doing factual reporting on African success. At Walter Reed Hospital, a retired colonel reads the list. 30 years of service, now branded a traitor. I served this country with my body, he mutters. Now I'm being exiled for using my mind. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim watches the broadcast in silence. Rain drums against the roof of the presidential palace. He leans back in his chair, fingers steepled. No emotion crosses his face, only a cold fire burning behind his eyes. Then quietly he speaks. Let's give Mr. Trump exactly what he deserves. He turns to his chief advisor. Prepare an emergency cabinet meeting. We respond him and we respond strongly. Outside, the streets begin to stir. Word spreads fast. Across Africa, the story becomes legend before dawn. A new era is about to begin, and it starts with exile. What follows is not just a political crisis, it's a global reckoning. Once he was just another name in a long line of African leaders, young, untested, and unknown beyond his borders. Now, Ibrahim Traore is spoken of in boardrooms in Brussels, lecture halls in London, and protest squares across the world. He rose not through bloodshed or inherited power, but through clarity of vision. In Burkina Faso, a country battered by coups, corruption, and poverty, he became a symbol of renewal. He spoke with conviction. He acted with urgency. And most importantly, he refused to bow. Africa must lead its own destiny, he declared during his first major address as head of state. His message resonated far beyond Ouagadougou. Across Africa, youth saw him as proof that leadership could be both bold and principled. In Washington, however, his growing influence sparked unease. American think tanks began publishing glowing reports on his economic reforms. Investigative journalists uncovered how his military strategies were dismantling insurgent networks more effectively than Western-backed forces ever had. Academics praised his rejection of foreign interference, not just in policy but in practice. But admiration turned to alarm when American voices started echoing the same praise. A Harvard professor called him the most promising leader of his generation. A Pulitzer-winning journalist compared his governance model to post-war European reconstruction. Even retired generals acknowledged his counterterrorism tactics as innovative and effective. To some, he was the future. To others, especially those in power in Washington, he was a threat. The White House was no longer a place of control. It was a fortress under siege. Scandals mounted like storm clouds. Failed CIA operations in West Africa exposed deep incompetence. Congressional hearings dragged on for weeks, humiliating the administration. Public approval ratings plummeted into dangerous territory. And then came the whispers. Not from enemies abroad, but from within America's own institutions. Intelligence reports flagged something unusual, rising admiration for Ibrahim Traore among American elites, not just in academic circles, but in media, defense, even foreign policy advisory boards. He wasn't just admired, he was respected. Trusted, listened to. That made him dangerous. They're starting to see him as a better alternative, one advisor warned behind closed doors. That's not just bad optics, that's a national security issue. Trump saw the writing on the wall. If people trusted an African leader more than their own president, something had to change. Fast. Inside a secure room in the Department of Homeland Security, a document takes shape, quietly, methodically. Names appear one by one. Professors at Ivy League universities, senior journalists at major news outlets, human rights activists who once advised U.S. agencies, retired military officers whose careers spanned decades. The justification? Anti-American propaganda. The real reason? They praised a foreign leader more than they praised the sitting president of the United States. Each name is scrutinized, each voice cataloged, each opinion weighed not for its truth, but for its danger to Trump's narrative. When the final list is compiled, it reads like a who's who of American intellectual life. 47 professors, 23 journalists, 15 activists, 8 former military officers. One entry stands out. Dr. Sarah Williams, Georgetown University. Her research on African governance had been cited by international bodies. Her lectures were attended by diplomats and students alike. Now she's labeled a threat. Another name catches attention. Michael Rodriguez, senior correspondent for The Washington Post. His investigative pieces on U.S. involvement in West Africa had already drawn criticism from the administration. Now he's marked for exile. The directive is clear. These individuals are not simply critics. They are agents of foreign influence, enemies within. This isn't new. History has seen this before. McCarthyism, Nixonian paranoia, Cold War purges. The playbook remains familiar. Silence dissent, label opponents as traitors, and justify authoritarian action in the name of national security. But this time, it's different. There are no secret hearings, no public trials, just a single executive order, signed in haste, that changes lives overnight. No debate, no transparency, no due process, only a list. And yet the tools used today are far more powerful than anything wielded in the past. Social media spreads fear faster than any newspaper. Real-time diplomacy turns domestic actions into global headlines. Surveillance systems track opinions as easily as movements. What was once whispered in back rooms now plays out on live television, and this time, the world is watching. In the dead of night, a file leaves government servers. It doesn't go to the press. Not immediately. It lands instead in the hands of a whistleblower network. Encrypted, anonymous, urgent. The draft executive order is inside. So is the list. Within hours, the underground digital community mobilizes. Screens light up in dimly lit rooms around the world. Activists, journalists, and human rights defenders pore over the details. Some see a leak, others see a warning. Word spreads fast, first in academic circles, then in media. Soon, entire university departments are in uproar. Is this legal? Is this constitutional? Does it matter? The world holds its breath, because if this goes forward, there will be no turning back. This is not just a political maneuver. It's a declaration of war on free speech. The halls of Georgetown University echo with frantic footsteps. Professors clutch manila envelopes, official notices stamped in bold ink, deportation order. One name stands out among the chaos, Dr. Sarah Williams. Once a celebrated scholar, her lectures were attended by diplomats and students alike. Her research on African governance was cited in international policy forums. Now she's labeled a threat to national security for speaking truth about an African leader. She stares at the paper in disbelief. Her family has lived in America for 4 generations. She's never left the country, and now it's leaving her. My entire life is here, she whispers. I built my career on analysis, not ideology. Across town, Harvard professors gather in hushed circles. Some consider legal action. Others debate fleeing abroad before enforcement begins. At Stanford, students flood social media, Trump refugees. Academic freedom. Now universities scramble to issue statements. Faculty senates draft emergency resolutions. But the message is clear. This isn't just politics. It's exile, and it's happening fast. In newsrooms across the globe, journalists react with fury. Michael Rodriguez, a veteran correspondent for The Washington Post, receives his deportation notice mid-broadcast. He doesn't cut away. He doesn't pause. Instead, he holds up the document and speaks into the live mic. This is pure political persecution. I'm being expelled for doing factual reporting on African success. His voice cracks, not with fear, but with rage. Outside, the White House, reporters demand answers. Inside press rooms, anchors dissect every word. But it's not just journalists who speak out. Retired Colonel James Peterson, once a hero of the Iraq War, reads his notice in silence. 30 years of service, 20 combat missions, and now he's branded a traitor. I served this country with my body, he mutters. Now I'm being exiled for using my mind. He calls a press conference, stands before cameras. His uniform still hangs in his closet. If praising effective leadership makes me a traitor, then I'm proud to be one. The clip spreads like wildfire. Inside the White House, tension simmers beneath polished surfaces. Advisors argue in low voices. Some warn of constitutional violations. Others cite public backlash. This will trigger lawsuits, says the Attorney General. We need to slow down. No, snaps another. We need to double down. This is how we rally the base. Aides exchange glances. They know what this is, not policy, but theater. The Secretary of State leans forward. You're not sending a message. You're starting a war. Europe won't stay silent. China will exploit this. Russia will frame it as proof of American decline. A long silence follows. Then Trump speaks. Let them talk. Let them protest. We don't need their approval, and we need loyalty. The room goes cold. One advisor types furiously on his phone. Another looks toward the exit. They know what's coming, and they know there's no turning back. Rain drums against the roof of the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. Inside, Ibrahim gathers his cabinet. The atmosphere is tense, not with fear, but with purpose. Trump has crossed a line, he says. Expelling citizens for supporting me is the act of a desperate leader. His foreign minister nods. It's a violation of everything America claims to stand for. Exactly, Ibrahim replies, which is why we must respond not with condemnation but with dignity. He unfolds a plan. We offer full honorary citizenship, positions in our universities, housing, healthcare, protection. The room stirs. Are you sure? Asked one minister. This could be seen as provocation. It's not provocation, Ibrahim counters. It's principle. While Trump expels brilliant minds for thinking freely, we welcome them. A moment passes. Then, one by one, his advisors nod. They understand now. This is more than a response. It's a declaration. Africa will not only resist, it will lead, quietly. Foreign powers begin to move. Behind closed doors in Beijing, Russian intelligence analysts watch the crisis unfold with interest. In Moscow, diplomatic cables fly across continents. In Brussels, EU officials hold emergency meetings. This isn't just about one executive order. It's about influence. China sees opportunity. Quietly, funding flows into Burkina Faso's initiative, not overtly, but through intermediaries. A new university program emerges overnight. Scholarships materialize. Research grants appear. Russia amplifies Ibrahim's counter-offer on state media. Clips of his press conference play across global networks. America rejects its own, reads a headline. Africa welcomes them. Europe hesitates, but not for long. France and Germany quietly endorse the initiative. Italy offers academic partnerships. Within days, Burkina Faso becomes a hub of intellectual refuge. What began as a domestic purge in Washington has become a geopolitical earthquake, and Africa is at the center of it. The world now watches to see who will blink first, the populist strongman or the visionary leader. 2:00 in the afternoon, the presidential press room in Ouagadougou buzzes with anticipation. Cameras flash, phones record. Reporters from 89 countries transmit live. Tonta Ibrahim steps into the spotlight, flanked by flags of Burkina Faso and the United States side by side. It's a deliberate gesture. A symbolic challenge. He stands tall, composed, but his voice rings with moral authority. Yesterday we witnessed something I never imagined. The United States expelling its own citizens for exercising freedom of expression. Behind him, the screen lights up, displaying the full list of 93 Americans slated for deportation. Professors, journalists, veterans, all punished for speaking truth about African governance. Today, Burkina Faso responds, not with vengeance, but with dignity. A hush falls over the room. We offer full honorary citizenship to all Americans persecuted by the Trump regime. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Journalists type furiously. Phones light up with breaking news alerts. Ibrahim continues. More than citizenship. We offer positions in our universities, research institutes, media organizations. Burkina Faso welcomes brilliant minds that America rejects. A BBC correspondent interrupts. President Traore, is this not a direct provocation to the United States? Ibrahim answers without hesitation. It is a demonstration of principle. When a country becomes authoritarian, other free countries must offer refuge to politically persecuted people. America was once that refuge. Now Africa is taking on this responsibility. The screen behind him scrolls through the details of the offer. Competitive salaries, guaranteed housing, free education for children, full legal protection, a path to permanent citizenship. American professors will earn here what they earned there, plus benefits Trump denies them. Universal health care, free education, guaranteed security. The world watches history unfold, and it begins with one man standing firm while another cracks. In Washington, Donald Trump watches the broadcast live. His face reddens. His jaw clenches. He slams the remote control against the wall. This little punk thinks he can humiliate me? His aides try to calm him. They suggest damage control, diplomatic de-escalation. But Trump is beyond reason. Mobilize the military, close the borders, freeze all Burkinabe assets. The Secretary of State tries to intervene. Mr. President, Burkina Faso is offering legal refuge to people you are deporting. I don't care, Trump roars. Nobody humiliates America like that. Security advisors exchange uneasy glances. Diplomats scramble for containment. But Trump has already made his decision. He storms out of the room, barking orders. This isn't just diplomacy. It's war. Within hours, the response comes, not from governments, but from the people themselves. 67 of the 93 targeted individuals publicly accept Ibrahim's offer. Dr. Sarah Williams, Georgetown professor, is the first to speak. If my own country rejects me, I accept the dignity that Africa offers. Retired Colonel James Peterson delivers a statement that goes viral. I'd rather serve truth in Africa than survive lies in America. Journalists issue statements. Academics resign their posts. Veterans return medals. One by one, they choose exile, not as punishment, but as protest, and the world sees it for what it is, a rejection of authoritarianism, a declaration of conscience. Twitter, trends explode. Trump refugees, Burkina citizenship, brain drain America, thank you Ibrahim memes flood timelines, satirical images mock the irony. America exiles its brightest minds. Africa welcomes them with open arms. Videos surface of students at Harvard, Yale, and Stanford chanting, "Academic freedom now. Trump dictator." TikTok clips show American professors landing in Ouagadougou, greeted by students waving both US and Burkinabe flags. One caption reads, "The land of the free, now found in West Africa." Hashtags shift from outrage to admiration, from condemnation to celebration. And in real time, the narrative changes. Trump meant to silence dissent. Instead, he gave it a global stage. European allies respond swiftly. France issues a formal statement condemning the deportations as a violation of democratic norms. Germany announces new academic partnerships with Burkina Faso. Italy follows suit. President Traore demonstrates the moral leadership that America has lost, says French President Macron. The European Union releases a joint resolution calling the executive order a dangerous precedent and urges Washington to reconsider. Meanwhile, African leaders rally behind Ibrahim. South Africa's president praises his courage. Kenya's foreign minister calls it a defining moment for the continent. Even within the US, institutions begin to break rank. Harvard invites Ibrahim to lecture, not as a threat, but as a case study. Sometimes the greatest gifts come from the deepest wounds, reads the university's official announcement. Across the Atlantic, in Ouagadougou, the message is clear. This is no longer just a political dispute. It's a battle for values, and the tide is turning. The world now watches to see who will blink first, the populist strongman or the visionary leader. The world reacts with a mix of admiration, disbelief, and strategic calculation. French President Macron calls Ibrahim's response a demonstration of moral leadership. His statement is broadcast live across Europe. In Brussels, EU officials begin drafting a formal resolution to strengthen academic partnerships with Burkina Faso, not out of charity, but necessity. While one of our closest allies retreats into authoritarianism, Macron says, Burkina Faso steps forward as a beacon of democratic resilience. In Moscow, Russian state media frames the crisis differently. State-run news channels run headlines. America exiles its own citizens. Democracy in decline. Ibrahim Traore, a hero for the global South. State television broadcasts highlight Ibrahim's press conference, playing it over and over juxtaposed with footage of Trump ranting at rallies. China, ever pragmatic, sees opportunity. Within days, Chinese diplomats reach out to Ouagadougou, offering economic incentives for collaboration. Not just aid, investment, infrastructure, education grants. Research funding. A senior Chinese official tells reporters, "We support countries that uphold freedom of thought and protect intellectual independence, unlike some others who now persecute their own citizens." Africa watches closely. So does the rest of the world. And for the first time in decades, the center of gravity shifts, not toward Washington, but toward West Africa. Inside the ivory towers of academia, the backlash erupts like a volcano. 47. University presidents issue a joint letter condemning the assault on academic freedom. The message is clear. This executive order violates the very principles upon which American higher education was built. Harvard goes further. It invites Ibrahim to lecture, not as a political threat, but as a case study in principled leadership. Under pressure. "We are witnessing history," reads the university's official announcement, "and we must learn from it." Faculty senates vote unanimously to honor expelled professors with honorary degrees. Departments pledge to preserve their research. Students organize sit-ins demanding the return of their teachers. At Stanford, a student-led campaign begins circulating petitions. Academic freedom is not a crime. Trump dictator universities once seen as bastions of liberal thought become battlegrounds for democracy itself. And the message spreads beyond campus. Walls. It becomes a movement. They start small, in front of university buildings, outside congressional offices. But within hours they explode. Students flood city streets. Signs appear like wildfire. Trump dictator. Expulsion justice. Where's my Constitution? Capitol Hill scrambles to contain the chaos. Democratic leaders call an emergency session. Nancy Pelosi stands before cameras, her voice sharp with fury. Expelling citizens for opinions? That's what dictators do. Behind closed doors, impeachment discussions begin in earnest. Legal scholars dissect the constitutional implications. Civil rights groups file lawsuits challenging the legality of the order. Social media amplifies every protest, every chant, every tear-streaked face. Trump refugees trends globally. Free Africa now follows close behind. One viral clip shows a young woman standing alone in front of the White House holding a sign that reads, "You can expel minds, but you can't silence truth." Across the Atlantic, Ibrahim watches it all unfold. Silent, focused, resolute. He knows the battle has moved beyond borders. It is no longer about policy. It is about principle. Ouagadougou International Airport buzzes with energy. Cameras flash. Phones record. Reporters transmit live. A plane lands. Doors open. Down the stairs step the first wave of American refugees. Professors, journalists, military veterans. They carry only what they could take. Suitcases, documents, memories. Waiting. For them is a sea of Burkinabe students. Waving flags, smiling, clapping. Some cry. Others reach out, shaking hands. Hugging strangers who have suddenly become symbols of something larger than themselves. Dr. Sarah Williams walks down the ramp, blinking against the sunlight. Reporters swarm her. She smiles through tears. "I never imagined I would find more freedom in Africa than in America." Behind her, Colonel James Peterson steps onto Burkinabe soil. He removes his cap, places a hand over his heart. "I served my country with my body," he says. "Now I serve truth with my mind." The airport is decorated in red, green, and gold, the colors of dignity, unity, and hope. And above it all, a giant banner reads, "Welcome, home, bienvenue." Chez vous Ibrahim stands at the foot of the steps, waiting. Each refugee arrives one by one. He greets them personally, shakes their hands, looks them in the eyes. No speeches. No grandstanding, just presence, respect, dignity. Later, during a public ceremony, he speaks. "America lost you through ignorance. Burkina Faso wins you through wisdom." The crowd erupts in applause. Michael Rodriguez, former Washington Post correspondent, wipes away tears. "In 30 years of journalism, I've never been received like this. Here we're treated like heroes, not traitors." Inside the newly established American Excellence Institute, Professors unpack boxes filled with books, notes, research papers. Burkina Faso offers them more than sanctuary. It offers them purpose. Salaries match or exceed what they earned in the US. Healthcare is guaranteed. Job security is absolute. Academic freedom is sacred. Dr. Sarah Williams looks around her new office. I came to Africa, and for the first time, I have total academic freedom. Colonel Peterson walks through a military training facility. What? I learned fighting terrorism is now helping a country that truly values expertise. Across the world, the message is clear. This is not exile. This is rebirth. Burkina Faso welcomes what America rejects, and the world begins to change. The American Excellence Institute opens its doors in Ouagadougou. It is not just a university, it is a revolution. Salaries are competitive with Ivy League institutions. Professors earn more than they did in the US. Healthcare is universal, guaranteed. Job security is absolute. Academic freedom, absolute. Dr. Sarah Williams walks through the halls, now Director of International Relations. Her research flourishes here, unshackled by political pressure. I came to Africa, and for the first time I have real job security, total academic freedom. Students from across the world enroll. African youth sit beside Americans, Europeans, Asians. They study governance, democracy, economic resilience, all under one roof. Within months, the institute becomes a global reference point. Publications increase by 340%. Partnerships expand by 500%. Rankings soar. Burkina Faso, once seen as aid-dependent, now leads the intellectual charge, and the world watches in awe. At the National Institute of Defense, retired Colonel James Peterson stands before a group of young officers. He wears no uniform, but his presence commands respect. We're building something new, he tells them. A model that combines American military expertise with local intelligence. His program is revolutionary, integrating counter-terrorism tactics with community engagement, psychological operations with cultural awareness. Global defense agencies take notice. NATO sends observers. The United Nations requests training modules. Even the Pentagon quietly studies his methods. Peterson's approach becomes a blueprint for modern warfare, not just about weapons, but about winning trust. What I learned fighting terrorism is now helping a country that truly values expertise. Africa is no longer learning from the West, it is teaching it. In a modest office in Ouagadougou, Michael Rodriguez types furiously, former Washington Post correspondent, now co-founder of the Burkina Free Press. His mission, to report without fear, to write without censorship, to speak truth, even when it stings. Within months, the outlet gains global credibility. Investigative reports expose corruption, human rights abuses, and geopolitical hypocrisy, not just in Africa, but globally. One exposé on U.S. foreign policy wins the Pulitzer Prize. Rodriguez accepts it via video feed from Ouagadougou. Refugees Trump expelled are doing better reporting on America than journalists who stayed, admits a former editor at the Post. The irony is sharp. The impact is sharper. Back in Washington, Donald Trump watches from afar. His approval rating plummets to 23%. Once untouchable, now vulnerable. Polls show 68% of Americans view Ibrahim more favorably than Trump. Debates erupt over what happened. How can we claim to be the leader of the free world when our own citizens need refuge in developing nations? Asks his Democratic opponent during a televised debate. The question lingers. So does the shame. Trump rallies his base, blaming fake news, liberal elites, foreign conspiracies. But the damage is done. The narrative has shifted. America lost its moral authority. Africa claimed it. In Addis Ababa, leaders gather for the annual African Union Summit. There is only one candidate. Unanimous vote. Ibrahim Traore is elected president of the African Union. The continent hails him as a statesman, not just for Africa but for the world. Under his leadership, Africa redefines itself, no longer recipient of aid, but exporter of values, education, governance, human dignity. He launches the International University of Democratic Studies, co-founded by American refugees and funded by Europe. Campus buzzes with students from 67 countries. They come to learn how to lead, not just govern. At the inauguration, Dr. Sarah Williams speaks. Trump meant to punish us for supporting Ibrahim. Instead, he gave us the opportunity to build something extraordinary. Across the Atlantic, Harvard invites Ibrahim to speak, not as a threat, as a case study, as a lesson. This is not just a political shift, it's a global transformation, and it ends with a final reflection that will echo for generations. 2 years. That's all it took for the world to change. In Ouagadougou, where dust once choked the air and poverty weighed heavy on the streets, a new era has dawned. The skyline is different now, not with towering skyscrapers, but with ideas that reach higher than steel. The International University of Democratic Studies opens its doors. It is not just an institution, it is a revolution in thought, founded by American refugees, funded by Europe, led by Africans. Students arrive from 67 countries, eager to study governance, resilience, and the quiet strength of nations that rise from silence. Inside, classrooms hum with debate. Professors lecture not from theory, but from experience, from exile, from defiance. A banner reads, "Here we teach what tyranny tried to erase." Outside, flags flutter. Not just Burkinabe, but American, French, German, Brazilian. This is no longer just Africa. This is the world's conscience. And it began with one man's refusal to be silenced. At the university's first graduation ceremony, Dr. Sarah Williams steps onto the stage. She wears a red robe, but her eyes are still sharp, sharper than ever. Behind her, a sea of graduates sit waiting. She speaks. Trump meant to punish us. Instead, he gave us purpose. A hush falls over the crowd. She continues. He thought he was silencing voices, but he only amplified them. He believed America had no room for those who praised Africa. So we came here, and we built something better. She pauses. We found freedom where he saw failure, dignity where he saw dissent. The students rise in applause. Some cry, some smile. All understand, because they too were shaped by exile, and they too found meaning in it. At Harvard, the campus buzzes with tension and anticipation. On the lawn, banners read, Ibrahim Traore, commencement speaker. Students gather, professors watch, cameras roll. The invitation was controversial but unanimous. Inside the auditorium, Ibrahim stands before thousands. He does not boast. He does not preach. He simply tells the truth. 2 years ago, an American president tried to silence voices that spoke truth about Africa. Today, those voices are teaching the world about dignity and resilience. He looks out at the sea of faces. Trump thought expelling Americans who supported me would weaken both them and me. Instead, he created stronger bonds between peoples, stronger voices for freedom, a stronger example that tyranny always backfires. A pause. Then, sometimes, the greatest gifts come from the deepest wounds. The hall erupts, not in applause, but in understanding. History has been rewritten, and Ibrahim wrote the final chapter. Months later, Oslo-docked snow falls gently on cobblestone streets. Inside the Grand Hall, the world watches. Ibrahim Traore stands on stage holding the Nobel Peace Prize. The citation reads, "For his exemplary defense of human dignity and academic freedom in the face of international pressure, for offering sanctuary to those persecuted for their beliefs, for proving that moral leadership can emerge where others see only chaos." He accepts it with grace, but his speech is not about himself. This prize belongs to all who resist tyranny with dignity, to the American refugees who chose principle over comfort, to the African people who welcomed strangers, to the global community that still believes in freedom. He lifts the award. Let this be a reminder. Exile is never the end. It is often the beginning. The audience rises. The world listens and history remembers. Fade to black. The narrator's voice returns. Soft, haunting, unforgettable. Power often mistakes silence for weakness. It forgets that the loudest revolutions begin with exile, and sometimes the greatest freedoms are found where the world least expects them. A final image lingers. Burkina Faso's flag. Beside it, the American flag. Side by side, one nation rising, the other remembering what it lost.